So I finally did it. I bought my first EV, and so far it's been a good experience. No regrets, but it's not perfect either. I get it. Range anxiety is real, but the one thing that only a few of us are talking about is the lack of spare tire in almost every EV in the market. Instead, we get this can of goo, otherwise known as a puncture repair kit. Last year, I had a major tear in the sidewall of my tire, and no amount of goo would have helped me in that situation. With spotty mobile coverage and long stretches of road between destinations in Australian hot conditions, I couldn't help but feel less confident about that tire repair kit. But let us not be in despair. There are aftermarket spare tire savers that can even fit in the back of the boot or trunk. For the BYD Atto 3, there's the Bromac Space Saver kit for approximately $700 Australian. And for a while, I gave this serious consideration. This Space Saver has a max speed limit of 80 kilometers per hour and would fit nicely in the bottom boot space. But I couldn't overlook the 80-kilometer-hour speed limit and had some concerns about the reliability of a product from an unknown brand. And it seemed too small to handle the typical bumps and potted holes. A 2-hour drive might turn into a 3 or 4 hour trip back home, so it's also quite expensive for what you get. If those issues don't bother you too much, then this might be a viable solution for you. And there's already other videos of folks trying them on and taking them for a test drive. Instead, I wanted a full-size spare. I wanted to have the confidence that comes with a proven product line that was going to get me home safely, no matter the situation or how far we were. So I began researching into various aftermarket full-size tire options, and there was lots to consider, especially for EVs. You see, due to the weight of the battery, EVs are significantly heavier than their similarly sized internal combustion cousins. As such, EVs need beefier wheels and tires that can handle the increased weight and higher torque without sacrificing too much range. Choosing the right size wheel and tire comes down to a handful of parameters that, when combined, should match or exceed the specs of the original wheel and tire. For the wheel, I worked out that these specs are usually printed on the inside of the wheels. So after taking off the wheel, I had a look at what was printed on the inside for the BYD Atto 3. And as you can see, the wheel is showing a max load of 660 kilograms. The 18 by 7J means 18-inch diameter with 7-inch width. And the wheel offset is usually marked with an ET, which in the case of the Atto 3 is showing an offset of 40. Now let's switch over and have a look at the specs for the tire. We can see from the sidewall of the tire that the Atto 3 has a profile of 235/50 and R18 and 101V. Let's take a look at what each of these things mean. To make it easier for myself, I punched in these specs into an online tire calculator, and the one I'm using is from calculator.net. You can see that the 235 refers to the width of the tire in millimeters. The 50 represents the aspect ratio, which is the percentage of its width that the sidewall is. And we use that to determine the overall rolling diameter of the wheel plus the tire, which works out to be 692 millimeters. Finally, the 101V represents the load and speed rating of the tire. Using the lookup table, we can see a load rating of 101 means the tire can handle up to 825 kilograms. Less important is the speed rating of V. Using a lookup table, we can see that V corresponds to a max speed of 240 kilometers per hour. Wheel widths need to match the tire widths being fitted using the following table. You can see here that a wheel with a width of 8 inches should have a tire width between 225 and 235 millimeters. In my case, this was what I was going for. In the end, I went with ROH wheels with 18-inch diameter, 8-inch width, and a matching wheel offset of 40. For EVs with larger brakes and calipers, it's better to stick with the original offset since there is less wiggle room for changes. The 850 kilogram weight capacity safely exceeds the 660 kilogram of the BYD wheel. For the tire, I went with the same brand, Continental, but different spec, going with the ProContact GX line. That has a width of 225, a load index of 102, which is higher than the current load index of 101. However, a slightly lower speed rating of H, allowing up to 210 kilometers per hour. One question you might be asking is why I opted for the 225 width tires, which is slightly narrower than the 235 mil. The main reason is because I wanted a skinnier tire that could fit in the back of the boot. However, when I laid the tires side by side, it looked as though the spare was slightly wider, although I didn't actually measure it out. So that was somewhat disappointing. I wasn't exactly sure why this was the case, but perhaps because of the wider rims at 8 inches as opposed to the BYD at 7 inches. When running these specs through the tire calculator, we can see that the spare tire is slightly taller by 1.8%, which is acceptable within the 3% margin. This is what the car looks like with the spare tire fitted on the front passenger side. I drove home topping out at 90 kilometers per hour without any issue. And then I proceeded to swap back to the original BYD tire.
So these are the two tires side by side. That's the spare one, and this is the original BYD tire. And they look almost pretty level. I think the spare tire actually looks a little bit taller here. But alright. M6 eyelets. These are galvanized. Yeah, and they fit straight onto these.
I wanted to find a way to secure the tire in the boot using eyelets that fit nicely in the protruding bolts, and use ratchet straps to tie down the spare. I did some checks to see how well the straps were holding down the tire, and it seemed to hold up pretty well. And this is what it looks like with the tray cover sitting at a slight angle on top of the wheel. And there it is. What do you think? What would you have done differently? Or what other solutions have you come up with? I would love to hear your comments, and thanks for watching.